December 1939. The location is the Soviet Union. A small man is dragged screaming down a cold concrete corridor. His legs buckle beneath him, boots scraping against the floor as two guards grip his arms. The sound of his hysterical weeping echoes off the walls. Why is he breaking down? Hours earlier, he sat confidently in a courtroom. He expected a pardon, but now that confidence is gone. He weeps. He begs for a mercy that will never come. His name is Nikolai Yezhov. At first glance, a broken prisoner, but in reality, the architect of Stalin's bloodiest purge. He signed the death warrants for hundreds of thousands. Now, he faces the exact brutal fate he inflicted on them. There is no escape. The executioner becomes the executed. Subscribe to Veil History immediately. Hit the notification bell. We uncover the dark chapters that textbooks omit. You do not want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment below. Which historical figure should we investigate? Smash the like button. The dive into the twisted mind of Stalin's most feared henchman starts now. May 1895, St. Petersburg. A child is born into the grime of the Russian Empire. This baby boy will grow up to drown a nation in blood. Nikolai Ivanovich. Yezhov enters a world of absolute poverty. His mother is on her knees, scrubbing floors as a maid. His father is a ghost, drifting between playing music in taverns and managing a brothel. There is no stability here, only hunger and cold. Young Nikolai scrapes through elementary school, but education is a luxury he cannot afford. The factories call to him. Tailor shops consume his youth. He stands just 5 feet tall, a diminutive figure in a city of giants. People look right through him. They see nothing dangerous in this small, quiet boy. That is their fatal error. 1915. The Imperial Russian Army needs bodies. They do not care about height or strength. They hand Yezhov a rifle and send him to the slaughter. He tastes the mud of the trenches. He smells the rot of the front lines. Shrapnel tears into his body, but he refuses to die. Stronger men perish around him. Yezhov survives. 2 years pass. The world changes forever. May 1917. 6 months before Lenin shatters the old order, Yezhov makes his choice. He joins the Bolsheviks. Why did he choose the red flag? Perhaps he sought revenge against a world that belittled him, or perhaps he simply smelled power. When the Civil War erupts, he does not hide. He fights with the Red Army. He proves his loyalty not with words but with violence. October 1922. The guns fall silent. The nation lies in ruins, but the Soviet machine begins to turn. This is Yezhov's true battlefield. Throughout the 1920s, he buries himself in paperwork. He serves as a secretary for committee after committee. Colleagues watch him with unease. The footage shows a small man in a wrinkled suit, always in the background. He never rests. His discipline is not normal, it is obsessive. He tracks every name, every file, every whisper. His attention to detail borders on the supernatural. By 1930, the climb is complete. Yezhov sits in the Politburo. He is now among the gods of the Soviet Union. He constructs a disguise. He divorces his first wife. He marries Yevgenia Feigenberg, a glamorous Jewish woman 9 years his junior. They adopt a little girl, Natasha. On the surface, a perfect Soviet family. But looking closer reveals the cracks. Witnesses describe a chilling duality. At official gatherings, Yezhov is invisible. He wears cheap, ill-fitting clothes. He sits with his head bowed, sipping water, smiling shyly. He looks like a child lost in a room of adults. At first glance, a harmless clerk. But in reality, a predator sharpening his claws. Nikolai Bukharin sees the truth. He looks at Yezhov's smile and feels a cold shiver. He compares Yezhov to the cruel boys in alleyways who douse cats in kerosene and light a match just to watch them burn. But this was only the beginning. Behind closed doors, the shy clerk vanishes. A monster takes his place. Yezhov's sexual appetite is ravenous. It knows no boundaries. Women find him playful. Men become his lovers too. He organizes wild, drunken orgies that would shame the emperors of Rome. Alcohol flows like water. Bodies mix without regard for gender. In the puritanical Soviet state, his bisexuality is a death sentence waiting to happen. It is ammunition his enemies will store for later. But pleasure comes with a price. Yezhov's body begins to fail him. Muscle weakness leaves him trembling. His blood count plummets. Skin infections rot him from the outside in. He drinks to numb the pain, but the vodka only feeds his depression. His temper snaps, his nerves fray. The executioner is slowly killing himself, even as he prepares to kill millions. 1934. That was the year Nikolai Yezhov solidified his place in the shadow of the throne. He kills quickly, efficiently, and without questions. Stalin watches this ruthless dedication and opens the doors to the inner circle. By the end of the year, Yezhov is a member of the Communist Party's Central Committee. 12 months later, he rises to the rank of secretary. Stalin does not just admire Yezhov, he relies on him. The dictator sees an administrative genius where others see a dwarf. In August 1935, Stalin sends a letter filled with genuine warmth. He writes, "When you say something, you always do it." The praise comes with a nickname. Stalin calls him "my little blackberry." It sounds innocent, but in the Kremlin, affection is often a prelude to blood. When Yezhov's health collapses from exhaustion and untreated infections, Stalin intervenes personally. He organizes high-end therapeutic treatment in Central Europe. The diplomatic cables to the Berlin embassy reveal an unusual level of anxiety. Stalin commands the staff, "I ask you to pay very close attention to Yezhov." He warns them that the situation is grave. Give him help and cherish him with care. He is a good man and a very precious worker. Why did Stalin protect him so fiercely? It wasn't friendship, it was necessity. Stalin needed a weapon for what was coming next. December 1st, 1934. Leningrad. A gunshot echoes through the Smolny Institute. Sergei Kirov, a charismatic Bolshevik leader, falls dead. The assassin acts alone, but Stalin sees more than a murder. He sees an opportunity. He needs a reason to purge every potential rival who remembers the old days. He needs a butcher who will not flinch at the sight of mass graves. He chooses the BlackBerry. Events accelerated. Within hours of the shooting, Yezhov takes control. He bypasses standard protocols. He directs the NKVD to arrest suspects from a list Stalin has already written. Yezhov works alongside Genrikh Yagoda, the nominal head of the secret police. But the dynamic has shifted. Yagoda is the past, Yezhov is the future. Together, they target the old guard, Grigory Zinoviev and Lev Kamenev. The charge is absurd, a plot to assassinate Stalin. At first glance, a standard police investigation, but in reality, a conveyor belt of fabrication. There is no evidence, so Yezhov manufactures it. The interrogation logs describe the methods. Sleep deprivation turns hardened revolutionaries into trembling wrecks. Strong lights burn their eyes for days. Exhaustion forces them to hallucinate crimes they never committed. When that fails, the interrogators target their families. They promise safety for wives and children in exchange for a signature. Yezhov goes further. He begins writing a book about this imaginary conspiracy. Stalin acts as his editor, correcting the manuscript in red pencil. The fiction never goes to print. It goes to court. August 1936, Moscow, the Hall of Columns. The first great show trial begins. The cameras record the scene. Zinoviev and Kamenev sit in the dock, broken and pale. The judges have their orders. The verdict was written before the trial started. The accused confessed to everything, clinging to the promise of mercy. It was a lie. The executioners do not hesitate. All the defendants are shot. Yagoda, still trying to prove his worth, keeps the bullets that killed Zinoviev and Kamenev. He labels them and stores them as souvenirs in his desk. But his collection won't save him. Stalin is already dissatisfied with Yagoda's pace. The dictator sends a telegram with a brutal warning. He threatens to punch Yagoda in the snout if the work doesn't improve. The era of the BlackBerry had truly arrived. September 1936. The order came down from the Kremlin. Genrikh Yagoda was out. Nikolai Yezhov was in. The new head of the NKVD wasted no time. His first objective was not a foreign spy. It was his predecessor. Yezhov opened a file to investigate and prosecute Yagoda immediately. The accusations were bizarre. Yezhov claimed Yagoda tried to assassinate him by sprinkling mercury around his office. He added the murder of the famous writer Maxim Gorky and his son to the charge sheet. Yezhov did not delegate the interrogation. He personally entered the cell to torture the former chief. He needed a confession. He got one. Yagoda became the first prominent corpse under the new regime. Events accelerated. The machinery of terror shifted gears. It moved from the police to the military. Why did Stalin target his own generals? They were the only force capable of stopping him, but paranoia overrode strategy. Following Stalin's direct orders, Yezhov arrested nearly the entire Soviet high command. Marshal Mikhail Tukhachevsky was a hero of the Civil War and Stalin's old rival. At first glance, an untouchable legend, but in reality, a dead man walking. He was dragged into Yezhov's torture chambers. Yezhov, known as the Blackberry, stood by the table. He oversaw every blow. Under brutal pressure, the marshal broke. He signed a confession. He admitted to being a German fascist agent working to overthrow Stalin. The tribunal's verdict was swift: death. Yezhov attended the execution personally. The scene is grim. Tukhachevsky kneels on the concrete floor. The executioner raises a pistol. A single shot rings out. Blood sprays across the walls. Yezhov watched the body fall. He immediately drove to the Kremlin. Stalin was waiting. He hungered for details. What were his final words? Stalin demanded. Yezhov replied with calculated coldness. He reported that the snake claimed dedication to the motherland. Tukhachevsky had begged for clemency. But Yezhov twisted the knife. He told Stalin it was a lie. He claimed the marshal died without truly laying down his arms. But this was only the beginning. The Red Army began to hemorrhage leadership. The statistics are staggering. Yezhov's squads executed 3 out of 5 marshals. 15 out of 16 army commanders vanished. The purge went deeper. 60 of 67 corps commanders faced the firing squad. All 17 commissars were eliminated. The archives show a systematic decapitation of the armed forces. The military machine that would soon face the Nazis was crippled before the first shot of the war was fired. But Stalin did not care about future threats. He only feared present rivals. July 30th, 1937. On this date, the Soviet machinery of death officially shifted gears. Nikolai Yezhov presented a document to the Politburo. It was known as Order Number 00447. The text demanded mass executions and deportations on a scale never before seen in history. Why did the leadership agree to such madness? It seemed they feared an internal uprising, but the result was a war against their own population. Hundreds of thousands of names were already marked for deletion. August 1937 brought a new directive. Order Number 00485 launched the Polish operation. The goal was the systematic elimination of the Polish minority between 1937 and 1938. The Great Purge spared no one. The list of targets expanded daily. It consumed loyal party members. It destroyed Bolshevik veterans. It wiped out Red Army officers, simple peasants, and intellectuals. At first glance, a chaotic frenzy of arrests. But in reality, a calculated system of racial and political quotas. Yezhov embraced the randomness. He did not hide his brutal philosophy. He stood before his subordinates and issued a clear command. There will be some innocent victims in this fight against fascist agents. The logic was absolute. Better that 10 innocent people suffer than 1 spy escapes. To him, human lives were merely waste material. He justified the carnage with a single proverb. When you chop wood, chips fly. But this was only the beginning. Yezhov was not an armchair executioner. He did not just sign papers from a warm office. He descended into the basements. He personally supervised the torture sessions. His sadism became a legend within the NKVD. Nikita Khrushchev, serving as a political commissar, later described a visit to Yezhov's office. The details were gruesome. Khrushchev noticed dark, wet spots on the floor and on the cuffs of Yezhov's jacket. The smell of metallic iron hung in the air. Khrushchev asked about the stains. Yezhov did not flinch. He answered with chilling pride. One can be proud of those stains. This is the blood of the enemies of the revolution. The violence in the cells exceeded human understanding. Guards beat prisoners with such savagery that their eyes dislodged from their sockets. But the official records lied. The doctors wrote heart failure on the death certificates. The archives show stacks of falsified medical reports covering up a massacre. Efficiency became an obsession. Yezhov designed a purpose-built execution room to speed up the process. The floor was concrete and sloped downward toward a central drain. The back wall was lined with thick logs to absorb bullets and prevent ricochets. Cleaning equipment stood ready in the corner. It functioned like an industrial slaughterhouse. The system processed living human beings into corpses within minutes. High-pressure water hoses washed the blood into the sewers. History gave the architect of this hell a fitting name: the Bloody Dwarf. The Bloody Dwarf. That was the name whispered in fear across the Soviet Union. While millions froze in unheated cells, Nikolai Yezhov lived like a king. He occupied a sprawling dacha with his wife Yevgenia and their adopted daughter Natasha. The property boasted a private cinema, a manicured tennis court, and a full staff of servants. The footage shows a domestic idol. Yezhov teaches Natasha to ride a bicycle on the garden path. He smiles. He plays the devoted father perfectly. At first glance, a loving family man on a weekend retreat. But in reality, a monster taking a brief break from slaughter. The contradiction is staggering. By day, he signs death warrants and designs soundproof execution chambers. By night, he sits by the bed and reads fairy tales. How high was the cost of this dual life? The archives provide a terrifying answer. The numbers from 1937 and 1938 alone reveal the true scale of the horror. Over 1.3 million arrests. Approximately 682,000 executions for crimes against the state. The firing squads worked in shifts. The barrels of their rifles overheated. The Gulag population surged by 685,000. It nearly tripled within 2 years. At least 140,000 prisoners died. They perished from malnutrition, exhaustion, and the brutal cold of the camps. The true number is certainly higher. The official records could not keep up with the bodies, but this was only the beginning of the end for the executioner. By late 1938, Stalin's enemies were dead or imprisoned. Yezhov's usefulness expired. Worse, he made a fatal mistake. He drank heavily. He boasted about his power. He claimed the Politburo was in his hands. Stalin does not forgive subordinates who forget their place. April 1938. Stalin promoted Yezhov to People's Commissar for water transport. It was a demotion disguised as an honor. It was a signal. 2 months later, the situation collapsed. NKVD commander Genrikh Lushkov defected to Japan from the Soviet Far East. He carried state secrets with him. Stalin decided Yezhov had lost control. August 1938. Lavrentiy Beria arrived in Moscow to assist Yezhov with the NKVD. In the frame, 2 men smiling for the press, but their eyes are cold. By autumn, Yezhov's office became an island. His close colleagues started disappearing into the prisons they once managed. The circle tightened. Yezhov recognized the signs. He asked Yevgenia for a divorce, hoping to distance her from his inevitable fall. It did not work. She was already vulnerable. Her numerous affairs and the arrests of her social circle made her a target. Yevgenia wrote desperate letters to Stalin. She begged for mercy. There was no reply. Events accelerated. She turned to Yezhov with a final request. She begged for poison. They arranged a specific signal. When her arrest became imminent, he would send her a warning, not a note, not a phone call. He would send a small statuette of a dwarf. November 1938. The courier arrived. He delivered the statuette. Yevgenia understood. She swallowed a lethal dose of sleeping pills. She chose death over the interrogation cell. The silence followed. November 1938. That was the moment the power shifted. Lavrentiy Beria officially took the chair of the NKVD. Stalin immediately cut all contact with his former favorite. The phone on Yezhov's desk stopped ringing. Colleagues looked away in the hallways. Yezhov abandoned his post. He didn't just stop working. He retreated into a haze of vodka and paranoia. His Kremlin apartment transformed. By day, silence. By night, it became the site of drunken bisexual orgies. It was a spiral into total madness. Why didn't he run? He had access to passports and funds, but fear paralyzed him completely. April 1939. The inevitable happened. Chekists arrived for Yezhov. The arrest was violent. The specific torture methods he had authorized for thousands were now applied to his own body. The interrogators demanded everything. They wrote the script, he signed it. Official incompetence, theft of government funds, treasonous collaboration with German intelligence. They added a final humiliation. They forced him to confess to sexual promiscuity and homosexuality. In Stalin's puritanical Soviet state, this was a character assassination designed to destroy his legacy. February 1940. Yezhov stood before the military collegium. He stood exactly where his predecessor Yagoda had stood. The room was cold. At a first glance, a monster facing justice, but in reality, a broken man pleading for his master's love. He maintained his loyalty to Stalin until the very end. He denied being a spy or a terrorist. He retracted his previous statements. "I prefer death to telling lies," he told the judges. He insisted the confessions were extracted through beatings, but it didn't matter. The secret trial ended. Guards marched him back to his cell. 30 minutes passed. They summoned him again. The verdict was read aloud. Death. Yezhov's knees gave out. He fainted. The guards caught him before he hit the floor. The Iron People's Commissar vanished. In his place was a hysterical, sobbing wreck. He begged for clemency. The appeal was denied instantly. Yezhov completely broke down. He screamed, he kicked, he fought with the guards as they dragged him out of the room by his arms. The man who had watched hundreds of thousands die with cold satisfaction now faced his own end in absolute terror. February 4th, 1940. The execution took place. The setting is grim. The basement is dimly lit. The floor is concrete, sloped for drainage. Future KGB chairman Ivan Serov raised his pistol, one shot to the back of the head. Nikolai Yezhov was dead at 44. There was no funeral. The body was cremated immediately. The ashes were dumped into a common grave at Moscow's Donskoy cemetery. He mixed with the remains of his own countless victims. The state erased him. For years, his death remained a secret. As late as 1948, Time magazine reported rumors that Yezhov was still alive, locked away in an insane asylum. But the punishment didn't end with him. His daughter Natasha lost everything. With both parents dead, the state sent her back to an orphanage. She was forced to surrender the Yezhov surname. The name was poison. Events accelerated, decades passed, the Soviet Union fell. But there was no forgiveness. Due to his role in the Great Purge, Russian authorities never officially rehabilitated Yezhov. To this day, he remains a symbol of the atrocities committed on Stalin's orders.